The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
Today's world news, what it means, where it's taking us.
I bring you the one and only possible message of world peace.
This is a message of hope, tremendous hope. And he said unto me, you must prophesy again.
The Trumpet Daily program begins right now.
You saw October 7th, and you saw what the damage and the horror that they committed. People can't forget that. You know, they tend to forget it, but they can't forget. That was one of the most evil things I've ever seen. And you just cannot forget that.
What can you tell us about what food and help you have witnessed coming into the region? Because there's a lot of rumors and misinformation.
And a lot of it is just that. It's misinformation. The truth is the Israelis have been more than willing to see massive amounts of food. Just the other day, Liz, I put pictures out on Twitter that showed that there were over 900 trucks filled with food, thousands of pallets of food sitting, rotting in the sun, that the UN refused to move into Gaza to feed people that could have fed Gaza for 2 years. Why? Because they didn't like the way the U.S. was doing the process through GHF. I think those pictures shamed them, and they finally started moving some of that food into the people. But this idea that there is massive starvation by the thousands, a lot of the pictures that people are showing, they're not even realistic. In fact, there's one of them that shows a little boy. It's a terrible looking picture, tragic. But it turns out the little boy has a congenital medical condition. He's not starving, and the Israelis actually sent him to a hospital to get treatment. In another case, you see a child that is touted as being starving. He's next to his mother, who is obese. So somebody's eating. It wasn't the little boy, but the truth is he also had a medical condition. Liz, I'm not going to tell you there's not suffering in Gaza. There's a lot of suffering in Gaza, but here's the reason they're suffering: because of Hamas. These are animals. They're savages. They've murdered people. They've held hostages. They've tortured the hostages. They moved their civilians in the front of military targets. They have increased and caused the suffering.
ممتازة يلا يا بابا. الحياة هان معدومة، يعني اللي بيطلع بيجيب معود، هذول بيطلعوا للموت وبيجيبوها وبيسرقوها بدون هنا بأسعار غالية علينا احنا هان، ما بنقدرش نعيش فيها ولا بنقدر نشتريها. ايش؟ مش نص عايز رقم كثير يا معلمي 50 68 ايش؟
البضاعة كلها غالية، وانت بتعرف كلها مساعدات أمريكية وببلاش، بس اللي عندنا هنا ببيعوها بأسعار غالية، يرأفوا بالأطفال وبحالات الناس، بس ما فيش رأفة في البلد.
No mercy. America gives it all away, and others too, but giving all of this free humanitarian aid, Hamas steals it, and then what little does make it down to the people, it's too expensive. The people can't afford it. So, and children are suffering, not at the hands of the Jews, no, because of the leadership in Gaza. That would be the terrorist death camp known as Hamas. You're listening to Stephen Flurry, and this is the Trumpet Daily. We appreciate you joining us on today's show. You can get to the live stream of this program at trumpetdaily.com or at the Rumble channel, rumble.com/Trumpet Daily. Thanks to Sam, our beloved producer, for standing in yesterday, giving me a little bit of a break on the Monday after the summer educational program finished. That was Sunday night, and the camp was torn down yesterday, and we move on now. I guess we're less than 3 weeks away from the orientation for Armstrong College and also Imperial Academy. I think one theme that you'll see running through what we touch on today is just how much mental instability there is in the world. And there's a reason for that. And many scriptures bear this out. Ephesians 2 and verse 2, just one of many. But there is a real spirit world. You have this shooter just walking through Manhattan with a rifle and then gunning down people. In New York, this doesn't happen, at least not with rifles, as you'll see from this next montage we've prepared. But this is another massacre, another mass shooting. And then, of course, the predicted obvious response coming from the regime media. Clip 21.
At 6:28 p.m., the 911 call center started receiving multiple 911 calls for an active shooter inside of 345 Park Avenue at 52nd Street in Manhattan. In total, we have 5 victims shot, our officer and 4 other innocent civilians, plus the shooter. The shooter is believed to be Shane Tamora. According to our law enforcement partners in Las Vegas, Mr. Tamora has a documented mental health history.
So it sounded like he, other than the long gun, which is not a simple thing to say other than in New York City, right? People don't walk around with guns like that. But was his face visible? I mean, do they have any idea at this point who he is?
They know he is a male, possibly white.
Male, possibly white.
There will be some, it's inevitable, that they'll go, well, you know, there are two sides to this, and he was mixed up or mentally ill or sick.
I've been around a long time. I can't remember anything like this happening in New York City, in the middle of Manhattan. And we don't see rifles in New York in shootings like this. You know, most of our crime in New York City is with handguns and not this kind of indiscriminate attack where we still don't know why he went to that floor in that building and targeted those people after shooting up the lobby.
But despite the progress we've made toward reducing crime, New York remains a prime target for terrorism.
Yeah.
My understanding is the city faces an average of 1 terror plot a month. And I find it to be absolute insanity that we allow weapons of war to just flow freely on the streets of America. And even though New York State and New York City have the strictest gun laws in the nation, those gun laws can only take you so far if guns can easily cross state boundaries. And this is exactly what happened here.
Yeah, the gun can easily cross boundaries, state boundaries. So let's blame it on the guns. Meanwhile, you've got Hamas terrorists speeding through the streets of Gaza, shooting rifles at people, their own people. I mean, that's a terrorist camp that's full of rifles, guns, grenades, rockets. And that's what Israel lives right next door to. And as you heard from President Trump in that cold open, let's not forget October 7, when they came streaming across the border with just ordinary residents of Gaza, you know, those that were there for the looting, and then embedded among them, well, there were some journalists as well, capturing it all on footage. And then these bleeding heart liberals here at home, here in the United States, say we just need a nationwide ban on guns. It'll solve everything. And that way the rifles won't just cross state lines. You hear virtually nothing, except that he had concussions, evidently, playing football. But what about the drugs that this guy might have been on? Or what led to his mental instability? Or the drugs he was on because he's mentally unstable? What about his family? What about his father? Nothing. Nothing about that. So we get a lot about the guns, except in Gaza. I mean, there, Israel is being pressured intensely to stop fighting back, to throw Hamas a lifeline. The Iranian Axis knows that it can't beat Israel on the battlefield. And so they're out in full force in the propaganda war, trying to get Israel to surrender, to Hamas, to surrender, to let the Hamas barbarians survive so that they can keep doing what they're doing to their own people. their own children, their wives, men, women, children. Play the two, Netanyahu, talking about the hoax, the starvation hoax that the West is just so eager to report, even if it's not true. And then play President Trump after that, clip 12.
There is no starvation in Gaza. We enable humanitarian aid throughout the duration of the war to enter Gaza. Otherwise, there would be no Gazans.
We can save a lot of people. I mean, some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that. So we're going to be even more involved.
Even more involved. You see, again, he's had some strong statements, but then he's also getting pressure from the other side. As we've reported on this program often, he's got advisors in both ears with very different opinions. And there he is saying, you can't fake starvation. Well, that's what they do all the time. Just get a snapshot of it and say it's because of Israel. We've got a segment in today's morning brief. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And last week, pictures of this poor young child eloquently expressed the suffering of children in Gaza. It was on the Daily Express. It was in the New York Times, front page. Pictures of the child appeared on CNN, NBC, BBC, and several other major news outlets. The Daily Express called it a horrifying image encapsulating the maelstrom of human misery gripping Gaza. It says here, Mohammed Matuk, one, weighs the same as a 3-month-old baby as famine slowly snuffs out life in the sealed-off enclave. Hunger and suffering has now reached a level never seen before, with at least 12 children dying from malnutrition in the past 48 hours alone. And then, as Joel Hilliker writes, turns out it's a blatant lie. This boy doesn't look like that because he's starving, but because he suffers from a rare muscle disorder, as Honest Reporting pointed out. In some of the other photos, his older brother is in the shot, healthy, alert, well-fed. What is wrong with people's minds? What is wrong with these offices inside of these major media complexes? It says here, the media shamefully published only the pictures that supported their narrative. They lied, and they knew they were lying, and when they're exposed as liars, they don't show any repentance. They just keep on printing lies. They're proud of their hoaxes. I mean, it's, again, evidence of a lot of mental disorder. I mean, even for the initial reaction of CNN, when the shooter's gone through Manhattan, there's pictures of him, to just automatically say he's possibly white, and he's not even white, he's black. I mean, what does that say about someone's mental state? If the first thing they say in reporting on this massacre, he could be white. It's the same with the reporting on Israel. Well, they could be Jews. Jews might be the problem here. What is it with all the self-hatred? So many of the outlets, as you'll see from Gadi Taub in just a second, but so much of the movement pushing these fake narratives, it's coming from inside Israel, as far as the starvation hoax is concerned. Jews who hate Israel. And we've got a lot of self-hate in the United States as well. The Bible talks about us coming into the times of the Gentiles. We've written about this before at the Trumpet. And we're certainly seeing that happen today. And there's a spirit behind it. There's a spirit behind it. They know they can't beat Israel on the battlefield, and so they are orchestrating this very effective propaganda campaign with the help, they couldn't do it without the help of the regime media, the Western media, the distinguished BBC, and of course CNN. We've been saying in recent weeks, well, I think I said it all last week, how Antiochus could not have very nearly destroyed America from within were it not for his assistants, his sycophants in the media. The media is so corrupt. The amount of deception and ignorance, the amount of lying, the amount of deceit, the amount of foolishness, it's shocking. It really is stunning to see how audacious so many of these lies are. It's so blatant. And as I say, when exposed, no apologies, no corrections, or if there are, they're tucked way into the back of the publication. Oh, we've made a little mistake. Turns out they faked that narrative, maybe using a photographer in Yemen somewhere. And President Trump saying something like, you can't fake these kinds of things, when this fakery was all over the news last week. And it's been exposed. Mystery of the Ages. Listen to this quote. This is from Herbert Armstrong. Got it here on the table. If you don't have a copy of this book, I mean, this will tell you about that real spirit world. The devil is real. The devil has a demon army, and they are confined to this earth, as Revelation 12 says. And that's why you see so much derangement on display. Mentally unstable shooters, mentally unstable terrorists, terrorizing their own people, massacring Jews, celebrating the massacre, filming it so the whole world can see. And then people the world over trying to twist Israel's arm to stop defending itself. What would happen, as I've said over and again, if Hamas had more firepower on October 7th? They would have killed millions if they could have. This world is unhinged. It's gone off the rails. In Mystery of the Ages, it says, all the evils and troubles in the world are caused by minds clashing with minds. And so, again, he's possibly white. The gun can walk across state lines. These are our big issues today. What about the clashing of minds? What about what's wrong with our minds? A majority of Gazans voted for Hamas in 2006. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with their minds that they would look at Hamas and say, that's what we want. That's who we want in charge. I mean, it's not like it's just confined to, that terrorist strip. But what about the mindset that says, well, here, we'll pull our own people out of Gaza, our own Jews, and we'll just hand it over to you? That happened in 2005. And we were the only ones, or at least one of the only ones at the time, saying, this land for peace mindset, it's going to explode in violence. It's not going to bring peace. In fact, the Bible calls it a wound, a deadly wound. And Israel's having to deal with that deadly wound even to this day. And the world is aligned against Israel because there's a lot of Jew hatred. I gave a lecture at this SEP camp on why Satan hates the Jews. I've referred you to that chapter in the Key of David booklet, chapter 8. Why is there so much anti-Semitism? Why is there so much hatred of Jews? Why is there so much hatred or bias against white people here in the United States or in Britain? Why are our nations being overrun with foreigners? I mean, just looking at the curses, as we've said before, it shows you who Israel is in these last days. The little nation in the Middle East is just one tribe, Judah, the Jews. But what about the other tribes? What about the lost 10 tribes? Well, that's discussed in another book. Well, it's in Mystery of the Ages too. But you need United States and Britain and prophecy to go with it. All the evils and troubles in the world are caused by minds clashing with minds. He says, but what is the real cause of clashing of minds? Is there any connection between contentious attitudes and the unseen spirit world? It is a mystery to almost everybody, but the Bible reveals a very real but invisible world, another dimension, as some choose to call it, existing along with our own, absolutely indiscernible to our five senses. It is the spirit world. There is a real spirit world, and you can't understand why there's all this evil unless you understand this first. And look, it's gunning for our peoples, our nations. Satan is a murderer. He's the father of lies. John 8:44. I think Sam mentioned that one yesterday. So much disinformation. A war over truth. A propaganda war. And yeah, even some very educated, sophisticated looking people in our Western nations are on the front lines. They see a picture of a little sick infant and just immediately, without any research whatsoever. Why does it take honest reporting to uncover the hoax? Where are the fact checkers at the BBC or the New York Times? We're under assault. This world is not God's world. It's being attacked by the devil. And there's a lot of people who assume that the devil is God and that this world is a pretty good place. It's not. A new world is coming. The Church of God is that world in embryo. That's discussed as well in Mystery of the Ages. Last week, maybe it was the week before too. This is, I don't watch much golf, but Scotty Scheffler evidently is the greatest golfer in the world right now. And he made some remarks a couple weeks ago, got a little traction on social media, because surprise, surprise, he was actually praising, marriage and family, and said that that was more important to him than sports, than making millions and millions of dollars. And he said in this statement in front of reporters that, if golf ever got in the way of his marriage or family, he'd give it up. And he also said winning championships in golf, something he's trained for his whole life, that the moment of exhilaration is so fleeting. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. Listen to a little bit of what he said a couple weeks back, clip 23.
It feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for like a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that kind of euphoric feeling. And to win the Byron Nelson Championship at home, I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, you celebrate, get to hug my family, my sister's there. It's such an amazing moment. And then it's like, okay, now what are we going to eat for dinner? Life goes on. There's a lot of people that make it to what they thought was going to fulfill them in life, and then you get there and all of a sudden you get to number one in the world, and then they're like, what's the point? Why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know, because if I win, it's going to be awesome for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to get to the next week and it's going to be like, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And it's just like, we're back here again, I love the challenge. I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest, wants and desires of my heart? Absolutely not. But if my golf ever started affecting my home life, or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living. This is not the be all end all. This is not the most important thing in my life. And that's why I wrestle with, why is this so important to me? Because I would much rather be a great father than I would be a great golfer. That at the end of the day, that's what's more important to me. Like a great amount of thankfulness for being able to do this. And like I said, it's literally one of the most fun things that I can do in my entire life. I love being able to come out here and play golf and compete. But at the end of the day, it's just not what satisfies me.
Okay, so good for him. I'd much rather be a good father than a good golfer. And you look at that and, I heard it and I almost played it a couple weeks ago because I thought, well, you don't hear that very often from celebrities and sports stars. And so good for him. Evidently, he doesn't even give that many interviews. But he comes out and he says what's important to him: family, marriage and family. Now, how that could even be seen as controversial at all is beyond me. But sure enough, there's been some backlash. And you know why? Because Satan hates family. He's behind this spirit of hatred and murder. And he hates the family because God is a family, because God is reproducing himself through family. God established marriage in Genesis 2. And it says in chapter 3 that you leave your parents and cleave to your wife, to your spouse. You are joined together. And the two roles, husband, wife, they are perfectly complementary. And together you build one family, oneness, unity. It runs right through God's purpose and plan. But you know what world we're living in today. It's rabidly anti-family. Look at those terrorists on the trucks, the food trucks, starving their own people. And then you wonder about, well, what about their families? What about the shooter in Manhattan? What about his family? What was his family life like? Because it seems like they probably need a little bit more of what that Scheffler family has. This is a commentator called Skip Bayless, and he's reacting to what Scheffler said about marriage and family, and what makes it so appalling is he tries to connect it with his religious mission, with his mission from God. You know, the fact that he doesn't have a family, or he couldn't build a family, but that he's so motivated, just like Scheffler, you see. You've got to put your profession first. And so this man that you'll hear here in a second, he's done that. And he feels like he's a very talented individual and that he's basically doing God a service. He's basically serving God. Listen to this. It's a little longer, but you'll be shaking your head for sure. Clip 24.
Okay, you probably saw these quotes last week. I certainly did. They shocked me maybe more than they did any other sports fan, especially golf fans. Scotty Scheffler, who works hard at never saying anything to the media, just suddenly absolutely unloaded in a press conference about how winning major championships just wasn't fulfilling to him anymore, just didn't mean anything to him anymore compared to being a great father and a great husband. This was the day before the British Open. Scotty Scheffler, the prohibitive favorite, said, and I quote, "This is not a fulfilling life. It's fulfilling from the sense of accomplishment, but it's not fulfilling from a sense of the deepest places of your heart. Sometimes I just don't understand the point," said the best golfer in the world. What? You know me, I'm all about the GOATs being cold-blooded sports killers, being obsessed with winning to the potential detriment of everything else in their lives. Win or else. Win or bust. Win or go home to nobody. See Tiger Woods. See Michael Jordan. See Tom Brady. And on a far, far lower level, see me. Yep, I've always been obsessed with maximizing the talent God gave me. But here's where Scotty Scheffler and I differ. To use a word Scheffler has often used, I felt called by God, to be the very best truth-telling commentator and writer I could be, the very best. However I could maximize my talent that God gave me, I'm going to do it. To do so, I sacrificed having children because I saw that properly, correctly raising children would be a huge time-draining distraction from maximizing my talents, which were public speaking, debating, understanding sports at the highest levels, writing at the highest levels for newspapers and magazines and book publishers. You might say I took on the persona of a cold-blooded media killer driven to achieve at all costs, but my obsession cost me my first marriage, and there have been times, many times, I've wondered if Ernestine would keep putting up with me. On our first date way back in 2005, I told her if this relationship goes anywhere, and I knew from the start it would, that she would always be number two to my career. I told her that. I declared myself. So it was that I was jolted and jarred by what Scotty Scheffler said on the evening. And you can't just shrug it off at age 29 and focus on, as you said, being a better father than a golfer. You can't do that, Scotty. No, God wants you to maximize the platform from which you can honor him and encourage fans to open their hearts to him, to God. That's what God has led or called you to do, Scotty, not to focus on your wife and infant son before you're 30.
It's really pretty embarrassing, as old as this man is. But see, we have a booklet that goes by the title Conspiracy Against Fatherhood. There's a conspiracy, and this is led by the god of this world, Satan the devil. What does this show you, too, about just how shallow and purposeless religion in the world is today? Well, you're on a mission from God. You've got to use golf to bring people to God. Now listen, I like a good sports analogy, just like the next guy, and we use them time and time again on this show. But to say, look, you put sports ahead of everything else, and really, it's like a calling from God himself. That's not true religion. Far from it. But here again, the spirit behind it is, the conspiracy is against God the Father, first and foremost. That's who the devil wishes he could blot out. He can't. But he certainly is blotting out a lot of families. And then the news story breaks and, well, we're talking about the rifle, or we're talking about maybe the mental instability. We're not talking about root causes. 2 Timothy 3:1 says, "This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves." You just saw a bit of that on display. The self-love, it's oozing out of some of these people. Covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents. Oh, well, there's an assumption there that there are families beginning to break down. Well, now you've got some out there calling for, well, don't even have a family. Don't even have children. I mean, it would be too much of a time-draining exercise. I can't do that. I'm a talented broadcaster. I'm a talented sports guy. Well, I think some would even question that. But we'll let that go. If our focus is not on, it's not to say there haven't been some in the Bible that have actually made sacrifices. I mean, Jesus himself didn't marry. And Paul, after his family fell apart, he had an important mission. But I mean, these were men that were actually serving God, actually doing God's service, carrying out God's will. Read the epistles of Paul. Read the Gospels of Jesus Christ. I mean, there's dedication to our Heavenly Father. And they were family builders. They were building the spiritual family of God. Paul even talked to his congregations. He said, look, I'm like your father figure. I'm like a mother in some ways, and you're my children. And what Jesus came and did, opened up the family of God to all of mankind. Even some of these commentators that you see, their minds will be open to the truth eventually. But right now, I mean, you see what they worship. You see what's most important to them. And Scheffler's right. It's so fleeting. And life is just like a vapor. The snap of a finger and it's all over. And you're an old golfer or former golfer. I remember one of my basketball coaches when I was a kid, when I told him I couldn't play on the Sabbath. And he looked at me and he said, well, you know, I have to admit your priorities are right. You're putting God first. And I will tell you, I'm a staunch Catholic. But in my house, Catholicism comes second to basketball. I mean, it was a pretty open and candid remark. I'll never forget it. And it really, it made me even stronger as a teenager. I mean, God in me, I hope and pray, and I hope God is still moving me and guiding me and teaching me and showing me what I need to learn and where I need to be corrected. But that really reinforced my faith. Well, I mean, my own coach admits that I've got the right priorities here. Basketball comes second, or third, or fourth, or fifth. God is first. What God teaches is first, always. Read through Hebrews 11 and see if there's any testimonials in there. People saying, you know what I did to really bring people to God? I shouted on TV all day about sports. Verse 3, it says, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good. That's what you saw there. He despises Scheffler because he puts his marriage and family first. He made those remarks, as you heard, before the British Open. And as I recall, I think he won the British Open the next day or the next week. But he can't be the greatest of all time, not in the mind of that commentator, because he's not putting golf first. What's the first and great commandment? Matthew 22, Deuteronomy 5, Exodus 20 is to put God first above all else. Verse 4, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God. That's what we see in our world today. It's full of it. It's full of love, self-love, pleasure, love for pleasure, and very little in the way of, purpose, hope. Verse 5, it says it has a form of godliness, but it denies the power thereof. It denies God's power. Why is the family under assault? Why is the devil trying to blot it out? Well, because God is a family. That's the theme of Mystery of the Ages in many ways. Listen to Barack Obama. He's giving advice here for young boys. Clip 25.
That's one of the things that I think a lot of times boys need is not just exposure to one guy.
Mm-hmm.
One dad. No matter how good the dad
is. He can't be everything.
He can't be everything. And that boy may need somebody to give the boy some perspective on the dad.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor in college at a time when openly gay folks still weren't out of line, who became one of my favorite professors and was a great guy and would call me out when I started saying stuff that was ignorant. You need that to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group so that if you then have a boy who's gay or non-binary or what have you, they have somebody that they can go, okay, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
That man is responsible for promoting a lot of filth, a lot of evil. Little boys that diminish the role of the father and promote the role of the homosexual professor. What little boys need is more homosexual influence. more transgender influence, a mentor that's homosexual. Now, what does God think about that? Read the New Testament and the Old. Read Romans 1. You can see it in Peter's epistles. References to Sodom and Gomorrah in the Gospels. In Jude, in Peter's epistles, in Genesis, obviously. What is God's position here? And when we read 2 Timothy 3, I mean, this is a perfect description of our world today. Who's behind it? Well, there's a real spirit world, isn't there? And speaking of homosexuals, how are they treated in Gaza? There's a good subject for the dear leader. Maybe we can talk about the terrorist death camp and the way they approach homosexuality. Every man doing what seems right in his own eyes. And here you have, the babies that are starving in Gaza. We've been told this by the BBC. So we've got to enforce a ceasefire. Why is it the world's job, the Western world's job, to feed the Palestinians? We'll just play along. Supposing they are starving. I mean, you saw from the cold open that they can't afford the food in some cases because of the terrorists. So it's America's responsibility. It's Israel. Who says to Israel, hey, all the best in your war in Gaza, and oh, by the way, make sure you're supplying them with all the humanitarian aid that they need as well? Who does this in the world today? I mean, it's just another illustration of the fact that this is not God's world. It's Satan's world. And the spirit of Jew hatred and hatred for your own people, your own nation, it's especially prevalent in the nations that are the end-time descendants of Israel today. Listen to Gadi Taub. He was on this program. We interviewed him a few weeks back, and he's talking about this starvation hoax that they're so eager to swallow every bit of it at the BBC, the New York Times, CNN. Clip 22.
I think, Mike, we should also mention the worldwide campaign about the atrocities that Israel is allegedly committing in Gaza. A delegation of Jews in an international Jewish youth movement were taken off a plane by a Spanish airline, where the crew called them members or supporters of a genocidal regime. So there was a briefing by the spokesman for the IDF in recent days, which said to all the military correspondents that there is no hunger in Gaza, that it's a campaign of lies, that the skeletal, hungry, dying children pictures are photographed in Yemen and distributed as material about Gaza. And what I think is most striking is that the campaign goes on in the Israeli press. It is the Israeli press that is leading the campaign about the atrocities in Gaza.
The self-hatred, hating your own people, promoting this campaign, this worldwide campaign, that's a hoax. And even, the premise of all this, basically, it legitimizes Hamas as a state, essentially. Yeah, Gaza's the state and Hamas is the government, the leadership. It wasn't that long ago when President Trump called into question the legitimacy of Canada because of its dependence on U.S. subsidies. And so he would say, you might as well just come in and be one of our states. You're not really legit as your own nation. You'd shrivel up if you didn't have us to take advantage of. And then you've got the same administration looking at Hamas in Gaza as legitimate. Hamas would die today were it not for the worldwide subsidies it receives from America, from Britain, from Europe. I mean, the money just flows. The trucks full of food just flow. And through Israel, by the way. And Hamas, they steal the trucks. They get on top. They speed through Gaza City. And they fire away with the rifles, and their own people suffer. In some cases, starve. And in a lot of cases, the starvation is faked. It's a picture taken in Yemen. And the Western media, they just love it. They love reporting about how cruel the Jews are. Isn't that easy? People have been doing that for thousands of years, even as they've tried to murder Jews. And they did it on a massive scale. Less than 2 years ago, 1,200 Jews, the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. It takes a little bit of courage to stand against not just Hamas, to stand against the world. I mean, rising lion, Israel's rising lion. That's the latest issue of the Trumpet magazine. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you subscribe to the Trumpet. Today, you see the 800 number there at the bottom of your screen. Listen to this from Mike Huckabee. He's the U.S. ambassador to Israel. He's on the scene in Israel, which, by the way, and Sam made this point yesterday, all the journalists, the Western journalists reporting on what the atrocities in Gaza, the ones that are there on location, where do they live? Well, Tel Aviv, maybe Jerusalem. They live in Israel. And then they promote lies in Gaza. I mean, some of them occasionally go into Gaza. And Hamas welcomes them in because they know they're friends of Hamas. But when it comes down to it, they don't want to live under a Hamas administration. And so they get a nice apartment, these Western journalists, in Tel Aviv, maybe right there on the shoreline of the Mediterranean Sea. Beautiful view, Western lifestyle. Oh yeah, lots of Western sins. Homosexuality all around. You can get into the pride parades, everything in it. You can't do it in Gaza, but you sure can in Israel. Play Mike Huckabee from Fox Business, clip 3.
They steal the food, then they turn around and sell it. They don't give it away, they sell it. They've had over $500 million of stolen food that they've been able to then use to pay their terrorist soldiers. And that's why they steal the food. And some of it is very difficult to get in because Hamas not only hijacks the trucks, but they shoot at the people who are coming to get it. It's a very dangerous situation, but primarily because you're dealing with people who do not want this war to end. Hamas is not interested in letting the hostages go, and it's been a horrific situation for the entirety of Israel.
They steal the trucks, the food, and then they shoot at their people trying to come and receive aid from the trucks. And then if they do sell it, it's their terrorist fundraising campaign. It's how they pay for their terrorist network. It's how they pay for the tunnels. It's how they hire new fighters, new terrorists that want to kill Jews. And they hand out guns to their army. And they wave the rifles through the streets. They'll kill women and children if they have to on the way to killing Jews. It's been their history. I don't have time to get into the history. Maybe later this week we can run through when Hamas was established back in the 1980s and all the madmen that it's produced over the years and the killing of Jews that's embedded into their own charter. They write it into their constitution. Oh yeah, we want to kill Jews as well. And then they celebrate it. It takes a certain amount of courage to stand up to that and to stand up to world opinion that is fueled by hoaxes and propaganda. There is a real spirit world. There certainly is. Listen again, skip ahead to number 2. I think this is still Huckabee.
Why is the onus on Israel, the country that was attacked by the leaders of these people who are starving, why is the onus on Israel to feed them?
There is an irrational hatred toward Israel that I can't even begin to understand, or certainly I can't explain it. And part of it is that it's coming some from the Europeans, some from the United Nations.
An irrational hatred of Israel or hatred toward Jews that I can't even understand. And a lot of it's coming from America, and a lot of it's coming from Britain, and a lot of it's fueled by the United Nations. So what do we do with this? How do you explain it? He just admitted he can't understand it. Well, as to that lecture I gave at SEP, why Satan hates Jews, Jesus is of the tribe of Judah. He sprung from Judah, as it says in Hebrews 10. Jesus was a Jew. And the Jewish people, I mean, for all their faults, we've all got them. They didn't lose their identity like the other tribes of Israel. And they had some courage to go back and to develop that little strip of land, to turn it in many ways into a desert oasis. And they only had 70, 80 years. They haven't been in existence as a state for that long. For 2,000 years, they were in exile, scattered over the earth. So, I mean, it's remarkable. God was behind it. There had to be a Jewish state in these last days because of how many prophecies had to play out with Judah. And we'll leave that for another program as well. But to just come back to the courage, what Israel is going up against and the courage that it has to show to go it alone in many cases. My father's latest trumpet, personal. Israel's rising lion, referring to Bibi Netanyahu. I was stirred by Netanyahu's action and his bold, aggressive leadership. In many ways, he is his nation's rising lion. What Israel did to neutralize Iran teaches all mankind powerful lessons about what it takes to overcome evil. I mean, you have to rise like a lion and confront the evil. Bibi was at a Christian conference just yesterday in Jerusalem. And here again, the references to the Bible and Israel's history, it really is unique to this leader. Play clip 5.
The beginning of the idea of freedom began in this land. And that idea spread throughout the centuries, and especially in modern times, and changed the world. It gives hope to the world. It gives meaning to our lives. It gives a bond between the world's greatest democracy, the United States of America, and the world's vibrant democracy here in Israel. And that's a partnership that is bonded in faith, in history, in tradition. I had the great privilege of being invited to speak at the joint session of the American Congress. And I look on the wall and I see the quote from Moses. That's our common tradition, our common wellspring. We're immersed in the Bible. We live the Bible. We have a future because we have a past. And that past is shared by millions, hundreds of millions around the world.
Now again, little Judah has its sins. It has its show of religion, even as they deny the power of God, the power thereof. But that said, I mean, he's fighting hard to keep the brotherhood of these nations from unraveling. And there are prophecies that say that's exactly what's going to happen. It's beginning to unravel. between Judah, Ephraim, Manasseh, and so on. But he's showing some courage, at least, to fight for Israel's survival, as my father says in that latest trumpet, to achieve what God wants us to achieve. We all need the spirit of a rising lion. I'd encourage you to study through that latest issue of the Trumpet magazine, Israel's Rising Lion. I took you a minute over, but I will not charge you for that extra time. That's all we have time for on today's show. The fastest moving hour or hour plus of broadcasting on TV, online. And this is the Trumpet Daily. Thanks again for joining us on today's show, and we'll see you tomorrow.